Also, please make sure to remain muted. Towards the end of the workshop, there will be an opportunity for Q&A. We ask that you type your questions into the chat box so we can answer as many as possible. We also recommend that you keep your view on speaker view versus gallery view. Now, I would like to introduce our presenter, Dr. Aisha Holder. Dr. Holder joined Columbia Health in 2015, and prior to joining Counseling and Psychological Services, she completed her internship at Princeton House Behavioral Health, as well as clinical psychology externships at Rockland Psychiatric Center, Center for the Study of Anorexia and Bulimia, and Iona College Counseling Center. Prior to pursuing her career in counseling, Dr. Holder was a vice president at JP Morgan Chase in the corporate training group as a facilitator and project manager. During her tenure, she also served as a human resources business partner in the investment banking and consumer banking divisions, as well as a senior career advisor and project manager in the Career Advancement Program, and as an associate in the Human Resources Associate Program. Dr. Holder received her PhD in counseling and psychology from Fordham University, her MA in psychological counseling from Teachers College and Columbia University, and her BA in psychology from Spelman College. Her professional interests include multicultural counseling, racial microaggressions, career development, and eating disorders. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Holder. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. And hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen so we can begin with the presentation. Again, it is a pleasure to be here, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be part of the Graduate Success Workshop series to talk about this important topic of resilience. You know, I may be stating the obvious when I say that this is an extremely difficult time. You're not alone if you're experiencing a lot of fear and worry and stress during this period of uncertainty. We're dealing with two pandemics happening simultaneously. There's the public health crisis of COVID-19, which has created changes in virtually every aspect of our lives, acknowledging that for some it has resulted in devastating circumstances. And then there's the 400-year pandemic of racism and oppression in this country. We're also approaching what will likely be a contentious US presidential election next week. And then, you know, there may be things that we're dealing with in our own respective lives, challenges and adversities that we're encountering. So what we know about stress, particularly when it's intense and chronic and overwhelming, is that it can give rise to or exacerbate burnout, depression, anxiety, as well as other physical conditions. But the positive news here is that we have an opportunity to learn and enhance ways to cope during difficult times. And resiliency provides us those opportunities to respond and adapt well to challenges and stress we encounter and will continue to experience in the future. So just to give you a sense of our conversation for today, an overview, want to talk about exactly what is emotional resilience and to discuss some of the common myths about resilience, as well as the elements of emotional resilience. And then we'll move into talking about concrete ways for building resiliency, which is where I really want to spend the majority of our time together. And then as Aisha mentioned, there will be time for questions and answers that you can note your questions in the chat. So if we talk about what is emotional resilience, we know that challenges and adversity are inevitable in all of our lives, and they're truly part of the human experience. Whether it's the death of a loved one, a loss of a job, a public health crisis like what we're in right now, issues of oppression that are present, and other traumatic events are all examples of very challenging life experiences. And it's not uncommon to experience strong emotions and a sense of uncertainty in response to these challenging experiences. However, we generally adapt well over time to life-changing situations and stressful conditions. And what enables us to do this is resilience. The American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health conditions, or professional and financial stressors. Resiliency is considered complex with multiple determinants, including biological, psychological, social, and cultural factors that come together that interact with one another to determine how one responds to stressful experiences. It's also important to note that resiliency is less about whether you have it or you don't. Resiliency is more likely to exist on a continuum that may present to differing degrees across multiple domains of our lives. So, for example, you may have an individual that may adapt well to stress in academic or professional settings, but may have more difficulties in adapting well to challenges in maybe their personal life or in their relationships. So when adverse events happen, we can acknowledge that they're painful and difficult and use resilience as a tool to help us get through those difficult circumstances and to empower us to grow and enhance our lives even in the face of that adversity. So I want to talk about common myths about emotional resilience because I think it's hard to incorporate this concept of emotional resilience if we feel like there are these myths about what they are. And so I think it's important to dispel common myths about emotional resilience because I think we're more likely to be more engaged in what it means to be resilient. So one common myth is that resilience is something you either have or you don't. So as I mentioned, it really operates on a continuum. It's not an all or nothing trait. It's not reserved for a select few, but rather something that is actually more ordinary. Resilience includes a variety of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that thankfully can be learned and practiced because it's a set of skills and improved by anyone to help in mitigating the impact of stress and the challenges we may experience. The second myth is that resilient people don't have problems or stress or difficult emotions. We all experience challenges and deal with adversity. Again, it's part of what makes us human. Being resilient doesn't mean that a person does not experience difficulty. However, people who are resilient build habits and skills that help them to solve problems and thrive even in the face of adversity. Another myth is that resilient people are so tough and so self-reliant that they don't need anybody. They don't need other people. And what I will say to this is that resilience is not about toughing it out or relying only on yourself. In fact, being able to reach out to others for support is a key component of being resilient. Resilient people have strong social networks and close connections with family and friends and other resources that they can access in times of difficulty. So it's not an either or proposition, right? That we can value our self sufficiency and also reach out to others to help us during difficult times. Another common myth that I'll note here is that resilience is about bouncing back. The fact remains is that there's some adverse events that impact our lives in ways that we can't go back to normal and what we remembered. Adapting really involves creating a new normal that can help us evolve and hopefully thrive again, even in the face of adversity. Next, I want to talk about the elements of emotional resilience. And there are three core elements. One is physical elements, and this involves things like nutrition, sleep, making sure that we're maintaining regular sleep schedule, and just overall good physical health is an important component of emotional resilience. Mental or psychological elements, and this can include areas like emotional awareness or regulation, which is our ability to potentially manage overwhelming emotions that we may experience, but it helps us to maintain focus even when we're in the midst of experiencing a lot of distress, and that can help in overcoming our challenge. It can involve things like self confidence and self esteem, the degree to which we feel a positive sense of self and confidence in our strengths, and also our cognitive abilities, our thinking and reasoning skills. And then the last piece is social elements. And this includes our interpersonal relationships, whether it be in our professional lives, in our romantic lives, whether it be children, parents, friends, extended community. We can be very inclusive in how we define our interpersonal relationships. It's really being able to communicate clearly and effectively seek help and support, and mobilize resources and take action when we are faced with particular challenges. Just wanted to note some of the characteristics of resilience. And this is not an sort of exhaustive list of characteristics, but these are some core components that we do see in individuals who demonstrate resiliency. So one is the emotional awareness, is that people with emotional awareness are skilled in understanding what they're feeling and why. And they're also more adept at better understanding the feelings of others because they're more in touch with their own internal life. And this type of emotional understanding allows people to respond appropriately to others and to better regulate and cope with uncomfortable emotions. Another characteristic is perseverance. Resilient people are less inclined to feel hopeless and helpless when they're facing a challenge. They're more likely to work towards a goal when they're faced with a particular obstacle. The third characteristic is what we call internal locus of control. It's the belief that you have greater control in your life, which can allow you to be more proactive in dealing with a stressor, to focus on being more solution oriented, and feel a greater sense of control, which can ultimately alleviate the stress that we're experiencing that might have been brought on by the challenge. Optimism. Resilient people also see the positives in most situations and believe in their own strength and their abilities. And this can shift to handling challenges from a more of a perspective of empowerment. Support, as I mentioned before, social support plays a critical role in fostering resilience, in addition to improving our overall mental well being. Resilient people can acknowledge their own strength and value social support, and they can surround themselves with supportive friends, family, and again, that broader community. Perspective is also another characteristic of resilience. Resilient people can learn from their mistakes rather than to deny them, see obstacles as challenges, and allow that adversity to make them stronger. They can also find meaning in the challenges that they encounter in their lives. And the last one is spirituality, which I acknowledge may not be applicable to everyone, and that's fine. But being connected to spirituality has been linked to stronger emotional resilience, with the sense that there's something larger than ourselves or larger than our circumstances that can help sustain us through difficult times. So for the rest of our discussion today, as I mentioned, I really want to focus on strategies, right? To make sure that you feel like you're armed with some key tools that can help in building and enhancing your sense of emotional resilience. And so the first core strategy that I want to explore is around building your connections. And again, can't emphasize enough the importance of community and social connection, not only in difficult times, as we're talking about the building resiliency during times of adversity, but also in more positive times, that we need community to really help sustain us no matter what the circumstances are. And so this core strategy of building connections is important. But the key point here is that we want to think about prioritizing relationships, connecting with people who demonstrate empathy and understanding can remind us that we're not alone, going back to how we started, that we're not alone in the midst of these difficulties. Resiliency is supported when we identify trustworthy and compassionate individuals who can validate what we're experiencing. They can validate our feelings. And despite the constraints on how we socialize because of COVID, we can establish or maintain consistent contact with family and friends in safe and responsible ways. And at this point, I wanted to pose a question to participants. You know, if you can share in the chat, and I will gladly read them out aloud, is what are some strategies you've been using to still stay connected to family and friends, thinking about virtually because of the constraints of COVID? What have you been doing that you've found to be helpful to maintain contact? I'll share one example. I attended a Zoom birthday gathering where the person who was being honored asked all of the participants to bring something that reminded them of that person. And then during the gathering, the Zoom gathering, then explained why you selected this item and how it was connected to the person we were celebrating. And it was a wonderful way of bringing different people from different parts of this person's life. And I can tell you, even though I knew some of the people on the Zoom call, but not all, that it really made me feel very connected. And while we would love to be with each other in normal ways that we remember, it doesn't mean that we have to be disconnected socially and emotionally, even though we're social distancing. So I'd love to, I'll check in the chat if you would know any strategies that you've used. It could also be helpful to others who are looking for some creative ideas on how to maintain contact. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, so we have someone sharing that I just call my family more often and I prefer more one-on-one individual calls. That's great. That consistency is important, and also determining the vehicle, the means by which you are communicating, I think is important. Texting may not feel as satisfying versus an individual call. I also see a weekly Zoom workout class with friends, which is also used as an informal check-in and time to catch up. So it's great. Like we're pairing social connection with also physical health and exercise. Another example is game night with friends, a weekly game night. This is all great. So what I want to note that these, thank you for those who noted their suggestions in the chat. I appreciate it. What I want to note about these examples is that they're consistent. I see that they're weekly. Another one, over Zoom to keep creative community intact. That's wonderful. Thank you. So again, with all of these, it's emphasized that it's weekly, right? And it doesn't have to be weekly, but the point is that it's consistent. And during times of uncertainty, we need to have rituals in our lives, things that we can still look forward to when we are in this extreme period of uncertainty and not quite sure what may be, what's going to happen around the corner, that we could have these things that we can create that we can look forward to. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing. So I'll just minimize this. Okay. Another suggestion for building connections is around joining a group or an organization. So in addition to one-on-one relationships, we can strengthen resiliency by joining a group that may be civic-minded, faith-based, or other local organizations that can provide social support during difficult times. For example, you might want to consider exploring one of the COVID-19 volunteer opportunities through Columbia or maybe through some other external resource. Another consideration is quality over quantity. Quality of a relationship is the depth and mutual commitment in a relationship, and not necessarily the number of relationships that determine how supportive they can be during times of difficulty. So, quality can also be looked at in terms of the level of satisfaction in social interactions. And that's why I mentioned really think about where do you find that you're most satisfied when you do connect with people in your community? Does it feel satisfying if you're doing texting versus if you're on social media versus actual Zoom where you can see them visually? So really think about the ways in which you feel that connecting with them is more satisfying, right? When we think about building connections. The other piece is asking for support, and this is an important element of resiliency, is the degree to which you're able to ask and accept the help from others. And I do acknowledge that we may have received different messages about what it means to ask for help, and so we could have mixed feelings about asking for help. Some of us may have received messages that asking for help is a sign of weakness, but in fact, asking and accepting help are really signs of strength. And so, if you're able to ask for help when others might not know you need it, you may benefit from the support that would not have otherwise been spontaneously offered. The next core strategy that I want to talk about with respect to resilience is fostering wellness. Um, and it's really about taking care of your body, taking care of yourself. And adversity that we experience can really take a toll on us, not just emotionally, but physically. And I know the term self care tends to be a trendy term, but it really is a valid practice for enhancing our overall mental health and building resilience. Promoting positive self care behaviors can strengthen your body to adapt to stress. An example is to establish a bedtime routine and to stick to it. You want to try to have a consistent sleep schedule of when you go to sleep and when you wake up. Now, I understand this isn't always possible. Like we are in midterm season and there's a lot of work to be done. But generally speaking, we really want to aim for going to sleep at a consistent time, going to sleep and waking up consistent times. Think about how you prepare your body for bed and what we describe as quieting our minds. It could be as simple as a cup of herbal tea, turning off your electronic devices about an hour before you go to bed, or taking a bath. There's also healthy nutrition, and engaging in regular eating is also important for building resiliency. And carving out time for regular exercise, running, walking, yoga. Um, I would note it's important to avoid negative outlets for dealing with challenges. So using alcohol and drugs are like putting a bandage on the deep wound, and it doesn't address the current challenge and is likely to create new ones. We want to focus instead on giving your body the nourishment and the resources it needs to manage stress. The other component around fostering wellness is practicing mindfulness. And mindfulness may be defined as awareness of the present experience with acceptance. Mindfulness involves at times turning towards our painful thoughts and emotions and seeing them exactly as they are, without suppression or avoidance. That you can't ignore and deny your pain and feel compassion for it at the same time. So things like mindful journaling, yoga, prayer, meditation can all enhance mindfulness skills and maintain a sense of hope in dealing with situations that require resilience. And so what I wanted to do at this time was to do a very brief guided meditation. I would invite you to join me in this. You can also feel free to turn off your video if you feel more comfortable. And this is a website called Insight Timer, which I highly recommend. And there are a host of meditations for any presenting concern you might have. So if would invite you all to participate if you'd like. Again, it's optional, but wanted to have an experiential exercise around mindfulness, in this case, a guided meditation. And then we can take a few comments afterwards and through the chat, and would love to hear some reactions to this guided meditation. So I will also turn off my video for a moment and we will begin the guided meditation. And please let me know if you're unable to hear.
Welcome to this calming meditation designed to bring you back to a place of stillness and balance. To begin, I'd like you to come into your most comfortable position, lying down, either with your legs straight, the feet flopping to the sides, or perhaps with your knees bent, the knees just resting on one another. Bringing your arms by your sides with the palms facing up, or perhaps on your belly, whatever feels nice in your body. Allowing your eyes to blink closed, starting to bring all your awareness inwards, letting your attention drift deeper inwards. And we'll begin by taking 3 big cleansing breaths. Take a big inhale through the nose, open the mouth, fully exhale. Big inhale. One more big inhale through the nose. Open the mouth. Just allow the lips to come together. Breathing in and out through the nose. Bringing all your attention to the breath. Feeling the flow of the breath in and out of the body. Feeling your body rise on the inhale and fall on the exhale. Feeling your body rise on the inhale and fall on the exhale. I'll be counting down from 7 to 1. With every number, you will progressively feel a little bit more relaxed, more calm. 7, feeling your body heavy, sinking downwards. 6, 5, 4, feeling your body relaxing deeper and deeper. 3, letting go even more. 2, 1. Feeling your body completely relaxed from the crown of the head to the tips of the toes. Completely relaxed. Deeply connecting to that place of stillness, of calm and balance. As you inhale, say to yourself, I am. On the exhale, peace. Inhale, I am. Exhale, peace. Inhale, I am. Exhale, peace. I'd like you now to very slowly and gently bring your awareness down to your fingertips. Just very slowly starting to move the fingers. Perhaps taking the thumb, brushing it across your fingertips. Letting the hands go and bringing your awareness down to the toes. Slowly starting to wiggle the toes. And when it feels right for you, reaching your arms up and overhead, giving yourself a nice big stretch. And slowly starting to bend the knees, draw the knees in towards the chest, wrapping your hands around the knees, rocking from side to side. Slowly open your eyes.
Okay. Oops, excuse me. So thank you. Would love to, any reactions? Would love to hear some reactions. You can note in the chat to that guided meditation. I was doing it along with you. I know I felt more relaxed is one reaction. Any thoughts? We have someone shared that they felt more focused and centered. Thank you. Really relaxing, exactly what I needed before going to sleep. Yes, it does help with that. Very calming is another comment. Yeah, thank you. I mean, these are all very common reactions to guided meditations. Someone said reminded them of videos they watch before they go to bed. So again, insight, I'm sorry, I just want to add another comment came in. I feel more positive and grateful. Yeah. So again, this is a tool that I believe like part of this process is collecting tools in our toolkit to help us cope. And so mindfulness can be really helpful in doing so. And as I mentioned, Insight Timer is a website, a resource that has a number of meditations on any presenting concern, or several, I should say, presenting concerns, and it is free, and they do allow for consumers to have access to a lot of their content for free. Just some additional comments I'll read. It's helped me realize just how much anxiety and tension I hold in my body. Absolutely. At first, my brain immediately protested and wanted to think of a million thoughts, and deep breathing helped, and I feel more clarity and focus. This is really good. Again, a moment to calm down. I wanted to address the point about that feeling of I wanted to think about a million thoughts. And if you found that during the guided meditation, it was hard to settle your thoughts, I would invite you to not judge that, because that can often be a reason why people say, you know, I don't think this is for me, it doesn't work. That we can note and observe what is happening. And if we note that there are a lot of thoughts that are coming up, we want to practice observing them rather than judging or criticizing. Because if we do the latter, we're more inclined to think that, again, this is not working and we may discontinue it. So, so thank you for these comments. So moving on to another core strategy, which is embracing healthy thoughts. One practice is to keep things in perspective. How you think can play a significant part in how you feel and how resilient you are when you're faced with obstacles. So say you made a mistake on an exam, like this is midterm season, right? So this can be very relevant. So let's say you made a mistake on an exam and you think, I should have known better. I always mess things up. I'm so stupid. Or you might think, I can do better. And I wonder how I could improve. These two ways of thinking lead to very different emotions, right? One is the beating ourselves up. And the second one was acknowledging that I can do better, but it was the invitation to figure out how I could improve, right? It's a more compassionate stance than the former. So there's a concept called cognitive distortions, which are simply ways that our mind convinces us of something that isn't really true. These inaccurate thoughts are usually used to reinforce negative thinking or emotions, telling ourselves things that sound rational and accurate, but really only serve to keep us feeling really bad about ourselves. So a common cognitive distortion is what we call all or nothing thinking, is when we evaluate ourselves and others with extremes, allowing for no middle ground or nuance. So an example would be making a mistake means I'm incompetent, rather than making mistakes means I'm human and all humans make mistakes. Another distortion that can impede resiliency is what we call the should statements. So making rigid, unchallenged demands of ourselves and the world. Another one is catastrophizing, when we make things worse than they really are. The key with cognitive distortions is to identify these irrational ways of thinking. And let me say that we all do this on a continuum, right? These cognitive distortions. But the key is we want to thinking pattern. So for instance, if you feel overwhelmed by a challenge, remind yourself that what has happened to you isn't an indicator of your future going forward or how your future will go, and that you're not hopeless. You may not be able to change a highly stressful event, but what you can change is how you interpret and respond to it. The other piece around this embracing healthy thoughts is the idea of accepting change. It's important to accept that change and transitions are part of life. Accepting circumstances that cannot be changed can help you focus on circumstances that you can alter. It's important to determine what level of control you have over a situation. We can spend too much time on the things that we have no control over. So think about evaluating your level of control of a situation by asking yourself, where is change possible and what actions you can take and or support you can enlist from others to facilitate that change. And this can help us feel less stuck in difficult situations. The last one that I'll reference around this idea of embracing healthy thoughts is to learn from your past. Identify ways in which you have been resilient and effectively faced adversity. Consider what attributes and actions you took that made a positive difference in guiding you through past challenges. And by focusing on your strengths, abilities, and assets, we can feel more empowered and prepared to meet uncertainty and the challenges that lie ahead. The next core strategy around resilience is this practice of what we call radical acceptance. It is a tool that can be effective when facing painful emotions and experiences by accepting them fully without judgment. Radical acceptance is a skill used to reduce unnecessary suffering and increase our ability to navigate through difficult situations. Radical acceptance is the understanding that life involves pain and difficult events. And radical acceptance is acceptance of reality as it is, and remembering that life is still worth living, even with painful experiences in it. Paying attention to your thoughts can help you notice when you're what we call fighting reality. It's usually the should statements are an indication. Examples like, it shouldn't be this way, or this shouldn't be happening to me. If you notice there's an underlying judgment in these thoughts, there is a hidden belief that things should be different, and refusing to accept reality can keep us stuck in bitterness, shame, anger, unhappiness, guilt, and other painful emotions. Avoiding and resisting painful emotions can add to our suffering. Now, it's important to note that radical acceptance does not mean that we agree with or approve of the injustice or painful circumstance. When we practice acceptance, we can still feel disappointed, sad, and perhaps fearful in some situations, but we don't add to the pain of non acceptance to those emotions and make them worse. While it might seem like a contradiction, radically accepting a situation provides us the opportunities to actually move forward and begin to help facilitate change. The next core strategy is self compassion. This is a really powerful practice. And I have a question for you, and you can indicate your answer in the chat. So imagine a close friend called you for support after a breakup of a romantic relationship, and your friend is really disappointed, sad, and hurt by this breakup, and your friend is looking for support. What might you say to this friend? If you could just quickly note any suggestions in the chat. Your friend's really upset. It's a recent breakup. What would you say to the friend? Any thoughts? It's okay to be sad. You can cry on my shoulder. It's okay to be sad and angry. Just let it out. I'll listen to you. Thank you. So I'm hearing we would validate their feelings. We would offer support. We would say, I'm here for you. That's another one that just came in. I'll listen. Allowing for their emotions to be expressed first, saying nothing, right? At least, again, an opportunity for them to express themselves. So what's interesting is I didn't see anyone in the chat offer the suggestion of telling a friend that they were stupid for being with this person anyway, that it was their fault, and the person likely ended the relationship because they're not attractive or interesting. Like, can you imagine saying that to a close friend? No, we would really not do that. The overwhelming majority of us would never say that. But we may find ourselves saying these very things to ourselves if we're in the same situation. And so self-compassion involves treating yourself the way you would treat a friend who is having a difficult time. Even if your friend made a mistake, even if they're feeling inadequate or facing a tough life challenge. Self-compassion is a practice in which we learn to be a good friend to ourselves when we need it the most, to become an inner ally rather than an inner critic. And there are three core principles of self-compassion: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Self-kindness involves being warm and comforting and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, instead of being self-critical. And yes, we can be disappointed when we experience failure. I always say we're not going to be doing cartwheels when we experience disappointment. Like, I'm so happy I didn't get that job. But we respond to our suffering with warmth and empathy, saying, I understand this is difficult, like what came on through the chat. I'm sorry you're going through this difficulty. So self-compassion allows us to experience our feelings without judgment, and we can intervene and determine what comfort we need in the moment. Self-kindness doesn't mean we don't acknowledge our problems or our areas of development. There can still be accountability. So we can hold ourselves, again, accountable for our shortcomings without being judgmental. The second element is of self-compassion is common humanity. It involves recognizing that all humans are flawed, that everyone makes mistakes, we all fail, we all experience adversity. And recognizing that the human experience is not perfect means we're not alone in encountering adversity and suffering. And when we engage in self-criticism, it further isolates us and leaves us alone in our suffering. But if we can remember our pain as part of the shared human experience, every moment of suffering can be transformed into a moment of connection with others. The last piece is mindfulness, which we discussed before, that awareness of the present moment. And it's important to pause and recognize how hard something is, because we are then able to figure out what do we need in that moment. I think we can recall situations where we're going through difficulties and we might have shared that with a friend or a loved one and wanting support, and they like immediately jumped into solution mode when first we wanted them to sit with our feelings. And sometimes that can feel invalidating, even if their intentions were to help. So there's power in being able to sit with what we're experiencing, not judging, not criticizing, but observing, and then ask this very powerful question: what do you need right now? What do we need right now? Right. Also, with mindfulness, it prevents us from being absorbed or what we call over identified with negative thoughts or feelings. So, for example, not only did I fail, but I'm a failure, where we become our suffering, we're over exaggerated with the experience, or not only was I disappointed, but my life is disappointing. We can see how these latter statements can really put us in a place where we're not feeling very positive and instead feeling hopeless. Okay. Oops. The other core strategy for building resilience is finding purpose. When you volunteer for an organization or support a friend during a time of difficulty, you can experience a sense of purpose and foster a sense of worth and value and connection. And all of these things support resilience. Be proactive. It's important to validate your emotions during difficult times. And it's important to think about how to create change. Consider the question, what can I do about this problem in my life? And take an initiative will remind you that you can find that motivation and purpose even during stressful periods of your life. Move towards your goals. Develop some realistic goals and do something regularly, even if it seems like a small accomplishment that enables you to move towards the things you do want to achieve. Ask yourself, what is one thing I can do to accomplish, one thing I can do today that can move me towards my goal and the direction that I see for myself. The other piece around finding purpose is to look for opportunities for self-discovery. People often find that they have grown in some way as a result of adversity. For example, after a tragedy or hardship, people have reported better relationships or greater sense of strength. Some have said during COVID, it's made them value relationships more, feel more connected, can be one of the benefits of recognizing, opportunities for self-discovery. So a sense of purpose can be found in many places, and all of them involve connecting to something larger than ourselves. It could be a cause or a movement. It can also be the roles that we play, a sibling, a friend, a partner, a parent. Another core strategy is gratitude. And the practice of gratitude can help us cope with difficult challenges. It has the power to energize and heal and bring a sense of hope. Now, I know it's easy to feel grateful for good things, and it may be harder to feel grateful when we may lose a professional opportunity or experience the ending of a relationship. But being grateful can represent a choice, an attitude that prevails with both triumphs and challenges in our lives. And when adversity happens, gratitude provides us a perspective from which we can view our life in its entirety and not be overwhelmed by what may be more temporary circumstances. So, considering questions like, what helpful lessons did the experience teach me? Can I find ways to be thankful for what happened to me now, even though I wasn't at the time it happened? What ability did the experience draw out of me that surprised me? How am I now more the person I want to be because of it? Has the experience removed a personal obstacle that previously prevented me from feeling grateful? And there are two components of gratitude where we can affirm the good things we've received and acknowledge the role that others have played in providing our lives with goodness. And so we know that practice of gratitude is associated with relieving stress and the parts of the brain that help in controlling emotion regulation, such as heart rate, um, just overall helps us to reduce our stress level. And so, some examples of practicing gratitude could be keeping a gratitude journal, establishing a daily practice in which you remind yourself of the gifts, the benefits, and the positive things that you enjoy. Again, practicing gratitude doesn't mean that we deny the challenges we're experiencing. We can have both. We can acknowledge that things are really hard, and we can also engage in the practice of gratitude. And that's the beauty of things. We don't have to choose. We can have both, and having both doesn't diminish the importance of one over the other. Remember difficulties. To be grateful in the present moment, it's helpful to remember the difficulties we once experienced. Reflecting on how we address those past challenges can help create the foundation of experiencing gratefulness. Sharing your gratitude for others, the next time you see your partner or friend or family member, remind them of the gratitude and the appreciation you have for them. Be sure to let them know. Come to your senses. Engaging your senses is the ability to engage our five senses, where we gain an appreciation for what it means to be human, or that incredible gift to just be present. And making a vow, committing to practicing gratitude. Research shows that making an oath to perform a behavior increases the likelihood that that action will be executed. So these are some ideas on, it's not, again, the only way we can practice gratitude, but these are some ideas for inviting more sort of grace and that spirit of gratitude into our lives. What I want to leave you with is really the importance of seeking professional support. And if the distress you're experiencing is really impacting your daily activities, please reach out to professional support like counseling and psychological services. I want to note that you don't have to be in crisis in order to seek professional support. And so you can contact, again, CPS, Counseling and Psychological Services for the Morningside campus, and Mental Health Services for CUIMC for assistance. We're a confidential resource. We offer counseling to students on a range of issues: stress, anxiety, depression, relationship concerns, eating concerns. We also have a range of support groups. We have over 30 virtual group spaces on resources for parents, resources for around self-compassion. We have a women of color group, academic success strategies in the time of difficulty. So we have a full range of groups as a way of supporting students in a time that we do recognize is really difficult. So I would encourage you to visit the CPS and MHS websites to explore some additional tools that can help in supporting your wellness. And please know that our counseling staff, we're here for you to support you during these challenging times and beyond. And so I want to end with how I began, which is really emphasizing that you are not alone. You are not alone. I encourage you to reach out to various supports and resources available to you in the various areas of your life. And seeking support does not diminish our strength, our capabilities. It really helps us, as I like to say, put one foot in front of the other and work towards thriving. Again, I thank you for your time and I wish you all the very best this academic year and beyond. Thank you. I think at this point we can, if there are any questions that you might have, um, please do share them in the chat. Any comments or thoughts, questions? We have a thank you, expression of gratitude. Thank you, back to you as well. Thank you. Okay. Any questions or additional thoughts? Okay. Having some thank yous come in. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention, and I hope that this was helpful in, again, as I say, adding more to your toolkit for how to deal with difficult circumstances like what we're in right now, but also beyond. So thank you.
Dr. Holder, it looks like a question did come in. It says, I had a question about optimism being a mindset of resilient people. Does that mean people who are not naturally optimistic are less likely to be resilient?
No, I wouldn't say that. Thank you for the question. No, it doesn't mean, again, I don't want to position this as an all or nothing, but we do know that people who are able to see things as half full is a characteristic of resiliency. But if you're less likely to see things in an optimistic way, it doesn't mean that you're not demonstrating resiliency. As I noted, there are other components to being resilient. So again, I don't want to see this as a all or nothing. Resiliency is on a continuum, and I think some of the practices I discussed can help to enlist a sense of hope as we are going through difficulties. But again, it doesn't mean that you're not a resilient person.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Holder. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Again, this is part of the Graduate Initiative for Inclusion and Engagement and our Success Series, our Success Series workshop series, sorry. And I want to encourage you all to fill out the evaluation form, which you'll find in the chat, and also to follow us on our social and to check out our website for future and upcoming events. We have one coming up actually next week on the 4th about sort of a post-election debrief, and hope that you can join us for that. If you'd like more information, please reach out to our office. Also, we sent an e-blast yesterday to all students about that event as well as others. Again, many thanks to you, Dr. Holder, and to all the students who were able to join us today, and hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.